Let's get to my top 3 reasons why I'm so excited to see these SEC teams. You see a number of them here in the top 10 get back to the field this year. And there's 3 reasons, and they're very clear and obvious, at least in my estimation. The first is I don't think that we're going to have the stops and starts that we're seeing in some of these other conferences like the ACC and the Big 12, where you're seeing postponements, game cancellations, and there's a few reasons for it, but really 2 reasons. The first is that they're not trying to play out-of-conference games, so you're going to have the like protocols with every team that steps on the field. What I've seen in some of these other leagues is that the lower level teams from the group of 5 who maybe don't have as stringent a level of protocols or testing, they come out there, they play, and then all of a sudden there's a bit of a spike in those bigger conference teams, in particular in the Big 12. We've seen this a couple of times, and then all of a sudden they have to postpone games. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is because I think Greg Sankey has gotten this absolutely correct. Greg Sankey has turned himself into the most powerful man in college football. And the reason is because he has navigated this offseason as well or better than anybody in the sport. I think postponing till the end of September was brilliant, and we're seeing that with some of these postponements that we're seeing out of the Big 12 and the ACC as they were trying to play through kids coming back to campus. The normal population coming back to campus, you were going to get spikes, and then inevitably that was going to bleed over into your football team, primarily through the freshman class who is on campus in those dorms all over the country. They're not going to have that in the SEC because they've waited. We've seen the wave come back to campus, and now it subsides, and I think that they'll be able to play through it. So Greg Sankey, with that in mind, I thought he made some great decisions. The decision to stay league only, I think, is a really good decision. And when you look at what's happening around the country with the ACC and the Big 12 having postponements, with the Big 10 and the Pac-12 having to totally reverse course in terms of what their initial plan was for the season. Again, Greg Sankey is going to come out of this looking like the most powerful and smartest man in college football because I believe, at least to this point, he's navigated it as good as anybody. The second reason I'm really excited to see the SEC, they have so many good football teams. I know you're saying like, yeah, hey, and the sky is blue, Klatt. We know that they have good football teams, but I think it's even deeper than what we've seen in the last couple of years. Think about it from this standpoint. The SEC has always had 3 really good teams, I would say great teams, and maybe even 4 if you throw Auburn in there with Bama, LSU, Georgia, and maybe Auburn. Like really good playoff caliber teams. Now you're starting to get some depth. Florida went 10 wins, 11 wins. Now Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts is back on that offense for Dan Mullen. I think they're a great team. I think they could win the East. I think Auburn with Bo Nix as an experienced quarterback should be very good. And then a couple of teams that we haven't seen a lot of in previous seasons, but I think are getting so much better that they could make some noise. A&M, Tennessee, and maybe even Kentucky. So again, the depth of the SEC is, I think, better than what we've seen even in previous seasons. That's number 2 for why I'm excited to see this conference. And finally, and this is the big one, folks, do you know why I'm so excited? So we finally get to see the SEC tested. They're finally playing a schedule that's similar, and in this case, even tougher than what we've seen other conferences play in previous seasons. These 10 conference games are going to be an absolute bear for some of these teams. Just to give you some perspective, Alabama, the last 2 seasons, the most consecutive weeks that they've played Power 5 opponents, most consecutive weeks, is 3. In the last 2 seasons. They're going to open with 6 consecutive SEC games. Unprecedented for Nick Saban. They've never had 6 straight weeks of even Power 5 competition, much less SEC competition, since he's been there. Just to give you some sense of how interesting that is, in 2012, it was one of the rare seasons that they even played 5 SEC games in consecutive weeks. The 5th game of that 5-game stretch was Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M when they went to Tuscaloosa and beat the Tide. So think about what we're going to see now as we see all these ranked teams face each other. Think about Georgia or Florida. They have 5 ranked teams on their schedule. Georgia has 5 ranked teams in a 6-week stretch in the middle of their schedule. It's going to be absolutely awesome to watch these teams tested in a meaningful way throughout the entirety of the season. And fans from all over the country have been waiting to see something like this in the SEC, and we're finally going to get it. So those are my 3 reasons why I am so pumped to watch the SEC start this weekend and get going on this 10-game stretch.
Start your Saturday strong at 10 Eastern with a legendary college football lineup on the Big Noon Kickoff Show. Big Noon Kickoff on Fox.